This episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast is sponsored by Podcorn. What is Podcorn? Podcorn is a marketplace that connects podcasts, like this one, with businesses of all kinds looking to raise the awareness of their brands through ad reads, interview segments, and more. I recently came across Podcorn and thought their idea of matching businesses looking to advertise on shows like this one was too good to be true, but quickly found that the site was very easy to use and was able to browse companies that I thought would fit the interests of our listeners. I've also come to love Podcorn's transparency when dealing with potential advertisers. Being able to set your own rates and having a variety of brands with a clear-cut idea of who they want to target and what they're looking for helps alleviate the stresses of sending countless blind emails in the hopes that someone will reply. All of this, and there are no middle people to deal with, and you don't have to give up any of the rights to your show. So huge thanks to Podcorn for sponsoring this episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast. Explore a wide array of sponsorship opportunities yourself and start monetizing your podcast by signing up today at podcorn.com/podcasters. Now on to the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John Beatty, and with me as always is Daniel Terry. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, man. Springtime came early. I haven't caught coronavirus yet. But a lot of people are telling me I should be washing my hands, but, that probably doesn't matter, right?
I don't know. We just, as of not even 20 minutes ago, just got our first confirmed case here in Michigan. My wife sent me the text. Apparently it's a real thing. I made fun of it by making the wash your hands meme thing that's going around. The wash your lyrics or whatever the fuck that thing is called. I used, coincidentally enough, I used Rather Be Dead by Refused.
Nice.
I was just putting in songs and seeing which ones kind of fit the photos that were being used for the different processes of washing your hands. And then, because what would be fucking funnier than having a Gigi Allen song, I used Bite It You Scum. And that was rather amusing too.
Yeah, well, we had a confirmed case here in St. Louis pretty much, I think 3 or 4 days ago, something like that. And it was the dumbest thing in the world because, like, this is the problem that, people don't seem to understand, is that if you are... Let me try that again.
As you cough.
Yeah, I'm getting it right now. No, but this is the weird thing that happens whenever you have like a virus type of situation, is this woman in Ladue, which is Ladou's kind of like the more ritzy part of St. Louis. It's like where all the rich people live. And so she had a confirmed case of coronavirus and was put on quarantine, the whole family was. And her husband went to a party. Was it her dad? Okay.
The assist from your wife telling the story correctly.
Thanks for the assist. Yeah, awesome. She was put on quarantine. Well, her dad went to a party and then, I guess, came home from the party and then took his other daughter to a daddy-daughter dance.
Daddy Corona daughter dance.
I mean, it's just like, well, it's also like, it's not like he just like went to the drugstore to get cigarettes, or something like went out to get something. Okay, maybe that's not a need, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not like he went somewhere that was like private, like, oh, I got to fill the car up, it'll probably be fine, anything like that. Like, it was literally like, let's go to a place where there's a lot of people, where there'll be tons of interactions, where there'll probably be, snacks and drinks and, all these things. So it's like, why would you do that? Like, I just, it boggles the mind. So yeah, it's getting like, it's full bore terrifying here in St. Louis because everybody's like completely freaking out about that we have confirmed cases, we have, all that. So, I can understand, John, if you don't want to meet up anytime soon. We'll wait until August, when all this blows over.
I actually got sent home today because apparently I didn't look very good. And straight up, some of the managers had made the comment that, my wife and I have traveled quite a bit. So,
I mean, they're not wrong.
No, they're not.
Have traveled quite a bit.
But I mean, that was over a month ago. So, but yeah, apparently, like one of the bosses walked by me. He's like, "Are you feeling okay?" And I was like, "I mean, like my body's sore, but like, I mean, I feel fine. I'm just tired."
Yeah. I mean, you just had a time change and everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah, I ended up was doing my job, looking at an email, like getting ready to reply to it, and then like one of my boss came up. He's like, "Yeah, you got to go home." I was like, but why? He's like, the flu's going around and all this other shit, and yeah, you just got to go. So I was like, all right.
That kind of sucks, though. Were you forced to use your sick time?
I'm only going to use like a partial day for that. I was planning on, and I'll cut this out. I was planning on calling in sick tomorrow anyway. So,
well, by the time this posts,
yeah, but yeah, so I guess the threat is real.
Sure.
People are worried. Everyone's on high alert. And we're not making fun of the situation, but it is kind of interesting. And I know we're not talking about the guest that we have, and maybe that's good, bad, or indifferent. I don't know. So I guess I'll get that out of the way. The guest is holy shit, Dennis of Refused. One of my all-time favorite bands, and
I was gonna say, how did we land this fish? This is kind of a whole new level. Sorry, I've been listening to a lot of Pantera.
Basically, the band was coming here to Grand Rapids, and I have been trying to get Dennis or anyone from Refused on the show when the record was coming out, and it was a lot of, the band's kind of busy, and, they're an international band, so trying to, get times set up is kind of rough, and it was just a lot of, hassle at first, and then just became a thing where I saw the show was coming. Typically, the publicist that I was dealing with that dealt with them likes to be notified a week before with a request, and I was like, hey, any way that we can get Dennis to come on the show and talk about the new record and just kind of, whatever. And surprisingly, it was, sounds great. Be there at this time next week. And there you go. I was like, holy shit. And then the nervousness set in. You thought coronavirus is scary. Go do a chat with Dennis from Refused and tell me how you feel. Because I was stupidly nervous. Really nervous. So much so that where the interview starts, quote unquote, the interview starts. So here's a trick that I figured out as I was in the moment, because I realized if I had to do a hard and here I am talking to so and so, and then had to read my questions, I think you would have heard the nervousness in my voice. So as soon as we were talking about my notes, because I pulled out my notebook with my questions already prepared and all that, and I was talking about just writing, and then that led to Dennis talking about how he writes tour diaries and so forth. And as soon as we were just kind of talking, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna hit record right now, because at least then we'll already be in the swing of a conversation, and I don't have to awkwardly make a conversation start happening. So that's the trick to this, why it doesn't sound like I'm nervous, because we were just already in the throes of a conversation and I just hit record. So I think it went pretty well. I didn't ask everything I necessarily wanted to, but I thought we hit on some pretty interesting things. I kind of wish, maybe we were a little bit, more in the throes of our coronavirus thing, because, obviously they're, a foreign band in a foreign country at this point. So it would have been kind of interesting to talk a little bit about how that has shaped, no pun intended, shaped their touring and so forth. Basically, Pearl Jam just canceled their entire North American and all the touring due to the coronavirus. South by Southwest canceled. Coachella got moved back, I think, at least a month. And you're starting to see all the overseas touring kind of coming to a halt. I know Hope Swall just canceled their Japanese tour.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
So, by all accounts, it looks like a lot of people aren't really fucking around with this, kind of bringing it full circle. So it's kind of the state of affairs we're in right now. It's affecting commerce. It's affecting the touring musical climate. As of when we're doing this, I'm going to be talking to Justin from Killswitch and JB from August Burns Red, and I'm sure I'm probably going to ask them about that, because it's a very interesting topic to kind of discuss. I don't really know that we've ever had something globally like this that would affect touring musicians. I don't even think during bird flu or swine flu or any of that stuff it necessarily really affected anybody, I don't remember it affecting tours like coronavirus has so far.
Yeah, this is really different. I've never seen anything like this, to be honest, in my lifetime. And it is hard to say if it's an overreaction or not. People are dying from it, but at the same time, it's very devastating to see that there's certain things about, and I feel like this is in, sort of in the vein of Refused, in the sense that it shows a lot of weird things about our country, and that we're the type of country that, like, instead of putting our seatbelts on whenever we're supposed to, we take out the annoying no seatbelt light that beeps at us instead of just putting on our seatbelt. And, like, I definitely see that with the hand washing stuff. And, like, the people are saying if you wash your hands, and just you keep your personal hygiene up, you're going to be okay, probably. It's not that you won't get the virus, maybe, but it's just a good situation to be in, like keeping yourself clean to help not spread viruses. Because like I work in a medical job. I actually got a new job very recently, and it's back in the biomedical field, and like hand washing is just common sense. And I don't think, and normally I don't like making controversial statements on the podcast, but at least that are not music related. But like washing your hands should not be a controversial statement.
No, it shouldn't be.
Like even a little bit. So that's my soapbox, my hand washing soapbox.
I don't really have any other way to really get into our conversation with Dennis.
Transition to that, John.
Yeah, I think I just need to wash my hands of this and get into our conversation with Dennis of Refused, and we will talk to you on the other side of it.
He still did it.
Coming prepared.
I feel like it's such an antiquated format to write things down. I don't know. It's really weird. I did an interview the other day, and I had to actually look at my phone because I didn't have this with me.
Oh, wow.
And I felt so not personal conversation because I constantly was kind of looking at my phone, and I was like, I feel like that's the problem we run into nowadays is that it's so impersonal because everyone will be like, let's hang out on your phone.
Exactly. I write all my lyrics like this, and I write all my notes like that, and
So out of curiosity, I mean that's not something I had on here, but just interestingly enough, because when people ask me why I actually take the time to write things down, I feel like because it gives a broader sense of actually taking the time, because you're not just gonna on a phone. It's not real. It's not tangible.
Yep.
So you could just write bullshit because you're filling space. You're filling whatever. So, but I feel like if you take the time to write something out, you're not going to bullshit yourself because you wouldn't waste your own time to do that. Do you find that when you write lyrics?
I think so. I think that, it is more of a, as I said, like an old school approach. I always done that. And I have boxes of notebooks that I put all my, I have boxes from as far back, I think, as like probably early 90s. I have boxes of like tour diaries and just
tour diaries.
Yeah, from the 90s, and just a lot of, and I think it's a bit, I'm really fast at writing on the computer, but this takes, as you said, it takes focus and a different sort of patience, and I just think it's great. I think it's a really good way to sort of focus yourself. You can use your phone for, I have lists on my phones of records I have to buy and stuff like that. But as far as writing like thoughts and ideas and lyrics and poetry, I think that the actual pen and paper is still hard to beat.
So in kind of doing minimal research, because I didn't want other things you've done to kind of bleed into what my subconscious when doing this.
Yep.
You've spoken a lot about you doing poetry. I don't think I've ever come across a book of poems that you've ever done.
No.
Is that something you would ever venture into?
I don't think so. I think what I do is I write stuff, and then some of it's poetic, and then I'll see like, I'm gonna use this in a song. So it's more of a, because sometimes when you write, sometimes you get a song and you have a title, and then you write lyrics, and sometimes you just write stuff. And I have a lot of stuff that's written, and then like, those 4 lines ended up in a song, and that line ended up in a song. So it's more that thing. It's not so much that I don't consider myself a poet really, but but you write stuff without. I think the big difference is when you write what you would assume would be portraits, you write without a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You just write, and then I always go look back at stuff that I've written. I'm like, oh, that's good. I could use that for a song. So yeah, all the good stuff ends up in songs.
Have you been surprised at writing something just, I don't want to say abstract necessarily, but just because the thoughts coming to you, pen and paper, you're going, and then realizing when someone in any of the numerous bands that you're in, you're like, holy shit, I have something really perfect for this melody or this idea.
Yes.
Is it weird how serendipitously sometimes your words will just fit music that you've never heard until that moment?
Yep. And that's a beautiful thing. As I said, you write down stuff, and then sometimes you'll get like a demo, or sometimes you get like a phrase, and then you start, and you're like, oh wow. And a lot of times you don't even remember that you wrote it, because you wrote it down as like just spitting something out on the paper, and then you go back and you're like, oh, that's really cool, and then you're like, it fits perfect for this chorus, and then you're like, oh my god. And because sometimes you write stuff and it's so connected to the music. I mean, maybe especially something like Refused, because Refused is a very direct language.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I write lyrics to Refused, I know sort of how to approach that. But for other things, like you find stuff, and you're like, oh, that's beautiful. Like, when did I write this? Like it's like stream of consciousness stuff, and then that ends up being a song.
So something that was kind of interesting in prepping for this conversation with you is thinking about how this is the first time Refused has played here. I know, I believe International Noise Conspiracy played here, dating myself, I think probably 15 years ago.
Probably.
Somewhere around there. But it's interesting to think of a band, and granted, if anyone who may be listening, I understand I'm going to say this, that it's the first, you still have a lot of firsts in Refused.
Yes.
I do understand Refused was not around for a while, so that makes a very interesting cross-section for you, where you're able to have firsts because you were gone for a while. Does that add to kind of the fun of still doing this all these years later, where maybe a lot of bands are burned out because you're experiencing the first time in Grand Rapids? I've been here once before, a decade or so ago, but I've not done it with Refused.
I mean, it's kind of cool. It's like, we're going to Russia for the first time in my life in this summer. I've never been to Russia. I'm like, and it is cool that you said there's firsts. And I mean, as I said, I've been here, but I can't remember. It's been a long time ago. But you know what I mean? I've been here one time, but then you come back with Refused, and for everyone here is our first time, and for everyone in the band, it's the first time, and that is cool, and it keeps it a bit more interesting. And the sad part, I would have to say, is the flip side of that, because we're a band, we don't tour that much. Mm-hmm. Like we do our touring, and the record comes out, and you do some touring. But we don't tour that much. And I mean, this tour that we're doing, it's the only U.S. tour of this year. So there's a lot of spots in the U.S. that we're not going to go to this time, or maybe sometime in the future. But it is also sad when you are a band that's more restrictive with our touring, that there'll be a lot of places where people they want us to come and play, and we're never going to, which is kind of a bummer. I mean, it is a complete bummer, but that's just kind of the nature. You can't play in it everywhere, but yeah, that's.
I think, in thinking about, I've now seen you guys since you've reformed. I actually saw as you keep calling it, the victory lap, basically.
Yes, the victory lap.
The reunion, basically, in Detroit. And it was weird because, I'm sitting next to Jeff Tuttle, who at the time was in Dillinger Escape Plan. There were people that had come up from New York, from some of the New York hardcore scene that dies today and so forth. And it was one of those things where it was wild to be in a room full of people who are bands that I've looked up to, and being like, and kind of sharing this, like, holy shit, I can't believe we're seeing this band here, like a band I never thought I'd ever see. And what's interesting is I've seen you 3 or 4 more times since then, but that feeling of like, I need to see you every time you're remotely near, because I don't know when the next time you're going to be through is. And I feel like it's really interesting that you guys really kind of embrace it, not from a financial standpoint to be like, you need to come because you never know when we're going to be here, but that you're just honest and being like, we would love to play everywhere. However, that's just not financially feasible at times for us to come to the States with all the visas and everything to make it work. So when we come, you better show up. Yeah.
I mean, it is the same thing for me. I never know when we're going to come back next time. And as you said, it's not a cynical purpose. It's just like, everyone has families and kids, and we have tons of other bands and projects, and some of the people in the band don't like to tour that much. Mm-hmm. So we try to be specific about our touring, and we want it to feel exclusive, not only for people that come and see us, but also for ourselves. So we don't want to be that band that's like, we're back together, we're playing thousands of shows. Because I mean, that excitement of 2012, I mean, it's hard to replicate that excitement, but we want it to be like when we come to town, as you said, like it might be another 5 years before we have a new record out. You never know.
Right.
So you want that excitement to be palpable. The people like, oh shit, they're coming. They might never come back, So it's a bit of a tricky balance to figure that out.
It's been interesting in thinking about your career, because I probably, like a lot of people you have said this to you, Shape of Punk to Come came out, I found it, and then I was like, man, can't wait to see this band someday. And I was like, oh fuck, they broke up like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so it was a thing where, like, like a lot of people, this record took on this life that...
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of people don't realize that when that came out, because it wasn't Fan the Flames, people were like, this record sucks. And then the fucked up thing is I've used that analogy to a lot of different people of a lot of different bands going, a band kind of deviated from what their quote-unquote sound was or what they became popular on, and then people don't like the record, but then 10, 15 years later, after the band either went away or whatever, it's like, well, I guess now that I've distanced myself from the consensus of the popularity of this band or whatever, I'm able to form my own opinion and go, holy shit, this band was doing something really interesting in reverse. I really like this record now. On the other side of that, was it really daunting to put out Freedom and know that probably whatever you could have put out, you honestly probably could have put out and called it Shape of Punk to Come 2 and basically redid the exact same record.
Yeah.
And I still wonder if people would have been like, well, I mean, it's not Shape of Punk to Come, so...
Yeah.
But, like, is it just... I just wonder from a creative standpoint, is it daunting knowing that no matter how great of a record it really is, how great you feel about what you're doing, that it's just going to be looked at as, well, it's not as good as something that came 15, 20 years before it?
Yeah. It is, but it's also part of what we had to do, like so a couple of things, like first of all, like when we did 2012, I didn't think there was going to be another record. I didn't think we were going to sit here talk about the second record, like so, but when we decided that we felt that we had something that was pretty awesome, so we felt like we need to continue, so we need to write more music. But we knew that going into the process of writing Freedom, because it's one or two things. It's just like, it's not enough Shape of Punk to Come, or it would be too much Shape of Punk to Come. So it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But at the same time, we felt that for a long time the band belonged to everybody else, and we were just watching the band from far, saying, oh, that Refused shit, that really took off, and so doing the reunion and doing Freedom was a way for us to assert our own control over the band, saying like, this is our band. And I mean, the same people that wrote Shape of Punk to Come was the same people that wrote Freedom, and we wrote it kind of in a similar way, a similar approach to music, but it turned out very different. As would have the record if we didn't break up in 98, the record would come out in 2000 would be completely different from Shape of Punk to Come, because that's who we are.
Right.
But yeah, it is one of those things, because also at the end of the day, like, you heard that record when you were 17 or...
Roughly, yeah. 17,
yeah,
18.
You're 17 and your mind is blown and you're like, I can't believe this. I've never heard anything like that. We can never make you 17 again. But you know what I mean?
No, exactly.
It is, and the record that people lived with for the 15 years, and they were like, they lived with it, and the myth of our band, and like, oh, they're not around, and all these crazy stories about our band. I mean, no matter what we did, we couldn't compete with that. But the cool thing is that we did Freedom. It was a bit of a polarizing record.
The thing to me about that record, though, was... everything that everyone lauded you for Shape of Punk to Come was very present on Freedom.
Yes.
So I don't understand why everyone...
No, but it is what it is. As I said, I mean, people have a perception and an idea of what they want things to be, and when it's not. I mean, just look at Star Wars, People are like in their 40s, and they're screaming, angrily crying, this is not what I wanted Star Wars to be. And you're like, no, of course, you were like 7 when you saw the first movie. Of course it's not going to be the same. And I felt a little bit like that when you put up Freedom. But at the end of the day, enabled us to put out war music. It's kind of a palate cleanser, because now like people compare war music to freedom and they're like, oh, it's different from freedom, so that's what it is. And maybe, I mean, it's funny now because when we play like Electra from Freedom Live, people go crazy.
Yeah.
They did not go crazy 4 years ago when we played it, but now I was like, well, this is a classic. I'm like, yeah. So,
well, that was kind of my thing is, do you think, and I guess you're kind of speaking to it now, that do you just feel that perpetually you're going to be a band that kind of, it takes people a couple years to really understand what you're doing, because they're just always going to compare you to something. Like, I mean, even leading up to this, some people, like a couple of friends were like, well, I really hope they play a lot of Fan the Flames of Discontent. And I'm like, okay, and if they don't?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that's going to be a bummer. And I was like, so you only want to hear something like, you, very much like you're saying, I can't make you 17 again to when you found a band.
Yeah.
But the thing that kills me is, and something that, I've been talking quite a bit on this podcast about, is I'm going to be 36 in a couple of months, and I think all the time about how I was fucking bulletproof when I was 22. And now I look back at my life and I'm like, how did I not fuck up my life more now for myself as an adult, a true adult, than I have? But I look back on those times fondly, but I also realize, like, man, I would not want to be that ever again.
Never ever again.
It's just its own time, and it needs to exist, and you need to keep moving on and going forward. But it's weird because I feel like bands, especially bands that we latch onto at such a very youthful time of when we're transitioning from youth to adult, we want them like stuck in that little time frame.
Yes.
It's so weird.
Yes, it is a bit weird. But it is, I mean, it makes sense. It's the formative years. A friend of mine said this the other day. He was like, well, like, they heard Shape of Punk to Come and they were 17. They had the time of their lives. They hear the new record. They hate their lives. Of course, they're going to hate the record. I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, you'll hear a record and, like, this does not remind me of when I was young and bulletproof. This reminds me of today when I have to go to work. And so, I mean, there's all those facets of, like, how you live your life and what life's done to you. But, I mean, you fall in love with music for a certain reason. And, some people, I read an article somewhere that most people stop discovering or listening to new music in their late 20s, early 30s.
I heard it was whatever you lose your virginity to, that's the era of music you stop moving forward in.
Oh, that would be horrible for me.
What would it have been for you?
All right, so here's the kicker. I lost my virginity listening to SOD Stormtroopers of Death. It's not
record,
my it's a bit racist, but it's not my proudest moment. But like a lot of people, as you say, they want things to be conserved in the way they remembered it. And I'm not like that. I'm the type of person that, like, I want to discover new music every day. I want to discover new songs. I'm the guy that, like, I'm the guy that goes really deep into, like, what about Danzig 5 Black Acid Devil? Was it really that bad? I'm that guy. I'm that guy that kind of, like, you want to dig in on stuff that failed or flopped or people didn't like. I want to dig in on that. I want to dig on the Dickwell Third record. That's, like, my favorite of all, So, but for a lot of people, it is, like, they want a nostalgia trip. And, when you play, I mean, we play a lot of old songs. We play a lot of new songs.
You do.
But we do play a lot of old songs. So it's like, if you want that kick, I mean, we're going to play 3 songs from Songs as a Fan, but it's also funny because out of the 800 people or whatever, 500 people in the crowd, there'll be 20 that knows that record. You know what I mean? So it's like, but those 20, they'll get a couple of songs, and and then we play a bunch of new songs, and we play new noise. We're not dumb.
I think it's interesting that you guys have kind of held on to your punk and hardcore aesthetic throughout everything, even though it would seem like a lot of your contemporaries kind of lose that mentality after a while. I always thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because we're so... I think one of the things for us is that we were never... I mean, really, for a while, we were super invested in punk and hardcore. That was, like, our life. But then we were, like... When we did Shape, I mean, a big part of making Shape of Punk to Come was, like, a reaction to the reactionary nature of a scene. And we're all very idiosyncratic people, which I think it's easy. Then it's easy because we have nothing to prove to punk.
Right.
So that makes us, it's easy for us to be like, oh, we don't give a fuck. Like, we're just going to do whatever you want to do because that's who we are as people. It's not like we're trying to prove a point or we're not trying to be punk. We're just like, we're just going to do whatever we feel like doing. And it is an interesting thing because we don't look very punk. If you see us on the street, it'd be like, it's just a bunch of fucking weirdos.
So something that's interesting to me about War Music, and something I had read initially when you were doing the beginning aspects of the pre-press for the release, was that you were saying that this record, unlike Freedom, supposedly, was that it was kind of marred in, I don't want to say drama necessarily, but just that it was frictions and and tensions were building. And it does make me wonder, do you guys just thrive in that environment to create the best music that you can? Because it seems like every time, like when you talk about Shape, the only record I can think of that you said that like seemingly was pretty easy to record with no problems was Fan the Flames.
Yeah.
Everything else since you've been back basically, or from Shape forward, you've always been like, well, there's a little bit of tension here and because of these things and so forth. So it just makes me wonder, do you realize that you thrive in this environment?
We're working on the new record, and it was a drama. It was more like, there's a couple of different people going, like different wills wanting different things, and we don't always see eye to eye. And then Magnus, our bass player, calls me and he was bummed about something, and then he said, well, I guess we're the type of people that needs to feel really shitty to create good art. I'm like, I guess so. And I mean, it's mildly frustrating that the process is never as smooth as you want it to be, because then when we go on tour, it's super easy. Like, we really get along and we really like each other and we like to play, but the creative aspect of being in this band is always difficult. I mean, not necessarily drama, but it's just difficult. It's just a lot of hard work and a lot of it's never easy. But I mean, it's one of those things when you create something. I mean, we're working on this record for like a year and a half, like on and off. I'm not a year and a half constantly, but on and off for a year and a half. And a lot of frustration, a lot of I'll fly down to Stockholm, I'll do vocals, and then I'll be like, oh, that was awesome. And then I fly home, and 2 weeks later, David calls me. He's like, well, we changed the chorus, and there's a new bridge part, so we need to redo the vocals. And I'm like, so there's a lot of that, just
right.
It constantly changes. And you're like, I think we're done with the record, and then another 4 months of working with the record. So a lot of that, but I mean, when the end result, when it's done, I think we all felt there was a frustrating process. And then we met up when we're mastering the record, and we're sitting in the mastering room listening to it just full volume back to back, and everybody looked at each other and we're like, yeah, this is pretty awesome, and then all that fades away, and all that becomes just something that we're like, whatever, it was just a part of that process, and it's worth it somehow, because that's, great art is created under difficult circumstances.
Something that's unique about you guys and this is, again, kind of looking back on things and kind of having the ability to look back 10, 15 years ago and think about how it informs you moving forward, is, you made no bones about it that when basically Shape, you toured into the ground, and that's kind of what led to when Shape of Punk came out. You did your CD release shows, there was nobody there. You did a shitty tour with I think Ink and Dagger, and it was one of those things where you guys broke up, and then all of this monster success for the record came about, and you're like, holy shit, you're not really a part of it. It's not you anymore. Nope. And so it makes me kind of interested in thinking about that as you basically, the thing you created in the truest of senses was let go and became something for everybody else other than all of you. Yeah. And you got to look at it in a way that most bands can't get to do, because they're usually involved in it in the moment, on the rise when a record's taking off. So, two-part question: what was it like being able to see everything happen, and how did it inform you moving forward when you guys decided to at least do the reunion? Yeah. What did that inform of that? Because to me, I feel like there's a lot of soul searching that probably happened because of what you were able to witness from afar, from your own creative output. Yeah,
it was weird. It's trippy to be a part of a band and a process and a record where people now are like, oh, that's a legendary record. And I mean, as you said, most bands where they do like a meteoric rise, they're part of that. We were not.
Right.
Could you see the record taking off? And I go on tour with my other bands, and people come up and they're like, "I love Refuse," and I'm like, "Where were you like? Yeah, where were you like a year ago? What are you talking about?" But I mean, it's so that was a wild thing. It was like also kind of frustrating because you're trying to create new music, you're trying to move on in life, and then people just keep pulling you back. So for the first couple of years when the Shape took off, it was like this weird thing. There was just going on. You're like, get rid of that, just stop it. And then after a while, like, well, that's kind of crazy that like, oh, it's been 10 years and people are still talking about this record. And then now it's 22 years and we're still talking about this record. And so when that flipped and you're like, I was a part of creating a record that we're going to talk about in 20 years. And how many people in bands get to say that? How many people in bands get to, because I mean, most of us, most of my other projects, most of my other bands, most of my friends, you play music, you're a fucking blip on the radar, and then you're gone. And then there's a handful of us nerds that'd be like, that was an awesome record. But to be part of a record that's like, people talk about it in the sense that it's like, like a real legendary record. It's an amazing thing. So then when we had to get back together in 2012, we're like, so the last show is in Harrisburg, Virginia, in a basement in front of 45, maybe 60 people. And the next show is going to be headlining the second stage at Coachella. So that jump, I mean, to figure out how to go from being a garage band to be like a big rock band, it was insanely weird. I mean, I've done the transition because I toured with the International Noise Conspiracy. We played Coachella twice. I played the main stage at Coachella. But the other guys, they didn't do anything for like 12 years.
Right.
David did some solo records. He spent 3 years working on a record. He put it out. He did 2 shows or 5 shows. And, oh, fuck this. I'm going to write another record. I mean, Chris, Magnus, and John, they weren't on stage for that whole period, So there was a lot of like... how do we manifest these songs so they make sense in rooms that are big or festivals that are big? And it took a lot of work to find that, because it's easy when you're in a room in front of 100 people, the energy it's so easy. You just go for it, but then, you play Coachella, like you need a different kind of output. But it was also interesting to be like, okay, now we can have a production. We can bring our own lights, and it's an interesting journey to have made.
Something actually, as you bring that up, the Coachella thing, there's I'm trying to think of the way to say this where I'm not being shitty.
No, you can be shitty. It's fine.
So, I remember actually when you guys got announced to do Coachella, and there was a lot of fan backlash about you guys specifically playing Coachella.
Yeah.
Now here we are in 2020.
Yeah.
And Rage Against Machine's going through the same shit.
Yeah.
Is it interesting to you that fans clamor for these reunions, clamor for their favorite bands to come back, but then when they do, it's like, well, that's not how I wanted you to come back.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. But I think it's also for us, specifically for us, maybe Rage Against Machine, it's like they want the reunion and they want it to happen. But then when it's like, it's like, as you said, the wrong festival, or they're making money, and,
God forbid.
Yeah, but I mean, it is. Look at Rage Against Machine. They always played arenas. They were huge. They were like one of the biggest rock bands in the world. Are you surprised they're playing arenas? The tickets are going to be expensive. But I mean, and I kind of get it. It is maybe maybe not the reunion people dreamt of, us playing Coachella, but for us to get the offer from Coachella. So here's how we thought about it. Like, most of the shows we played, they're like this, like 600 to 1,500 people. We do festivals. But I mean, the Coachella offer was fucking good.
Right.
It's good money.
It supports the rest of the tour.
It supports, and I mean, it enabled us to, everybody took time off from life for 3 months to practice every day, 9 to 5, every day for 3 months. Because the money we got from Coachella enable us to do that and enable us to tour and become a proper band again. And yeah, I mean, the Coachella show was what it was. It was a bit weird, and I mean, that crowd wasn't necessarily our crowd. But then we went on tour, and now, you know, if you want to see us at a club show, you can come see us at a club show. So it was just like a means to an end for us. It was like, okay, we'll do that. They'll pay us tons of money, and we can use this money to actually get in shape. You know, we can use this money to be the greatest fucking band we can be. And, you know, but then, that's kind of how we felt about it. But yeah, we didn't think that we're going to be here in 2020 and, you know, Grand Rapids.
Last couple of questions. I don't know how much longer I have before. So you pretty outspoken about your political beliefs and where you lie on things, and
yeah,
I think for a lot of people that's why we enjoy your music. That's why we enjoy you. Yeah. But I have wondered, because in doing this and being as big into music as I have, you know, you hear of bands that have to self-censor themselves to go to foreign countries because of political agendas or whatever. I've never heard of you guys running into that. Is that something that you've ever faced?
No. What? Noise Conspiracy went to China, and we had to submit the lyrics beforehand so they could approve of the lyrics, and we actually got a show canceled because they thought our lyrics wasn't...
apparently I got you for like a couple more minutes. You got something.
Yeah. So, but apparently they didn't like the lyrics, so we got a show canceled. But apart from that, I mean... What you try to do is, like, you try to talk about stuff that matters kind of universally and maybe also locally, and you know, the political aspect of the band is we can't shy away from that. It's a part of like the Refused DNA, you know.
Right.
It is funny when some people are like, I read online now, someone like they're all angry because we're getting all political with a new record. And I'm like, wait, Shape of Punctum opens up with I Got a Bone to Pick with Capitalist Men for You to Break.
Yeah.
Songs to Fan the Flames is like the International Works of the World's song pamphlet from like the 30s.
Yeah.
It's always been there. It's never not been there. So it is. But I mean, that's also what happened when Shape became like a crossover record. There's a lot of people that just heard new noise and like, oh, these guys are rad, and then they see us live and they're like, whoa, what's this fucking Pinko on about, you know? So, but that's you know, it's just who we are.
Well, you got to get ready to do sound check, so thank you very much for doing this.
Well, thank you for having me.
I was stupidly nervous to do this with you because I hold you in a very high regard intellectually.
Well, you know, that's...
So thank you very much for doing this, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing you and not having to drive 3 hours away to go see you perform.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks.
So that was my conversation with Dennis of Refused. Again, you know, this podcast is afforded myself and Dan, with some of the conversations we had, like Adam of Hope's Fall, of getting to talk to bands and people in the bands that we have long admired, and Refused is up there for me. I think I mentioned in the interview that basically I heard Refused, like most people, when Shape of Punk to Come came out, and I was like, holy fuck, this band's awesome, and then they broke up. And I was like, oh my god, I'm never gonna get to see this band. Like, you know, just like everybody else, they rose to legendary status. And, you know, a lot of my favorite singers or vocalists are also very lyrically dense. And I mean, Dennis, Keith from Eatsid, Chino to a degree. Like, there are a lot of people I hold in very high regard. And Dennis as an intellectual is one of those to me. And so I was stupidly nervous talking to him because I did not think I could even hold a conversation with someone that I hold in such high regard. And, you know, the interesting thing is I think the way, like I said in the intro, that I just kind of hit record and we started talking and I had notes, but I tried to let things kind of flow organically with what I also had written down. And I could have talked to him for probably another 40 minutes at least. But I think we kind of, you know, had a really interesting conversation, and it kind of parallels really with the Telly Smith one we just dropped, about looking back and about realizing who you were versus who you are, and realizing that those are one and the same, but those experiences that you have don't get negated by one or the other existence that you have. But, you know, you can't live in the past either.
Yeah, and like that's really hard for someone like me, because, like, you know, when you guys were talking about Fan the Flames of Discontent, I was like, yeah, that's the record. You know, I'm that one of 4 people at the show that's like, yeah, they played that for me, you know. But, you know, to his point about, like, you know, we can't go back in time and make you 17 again, you know, and you guys had a very hilarious conversation about, you know, you stopped checking out music based on when you lost your virginity.
Have you heard that theory, by the way?
I have heard that theory,
Okay.
and I've heard it a couple of different ways. Some people go the virginity angle, some people go the just whatever you were into in high school, which, I mean, it's pretty much the same argument for a lot of people. So, yeah, like, I totally get that, because, like, I mean, dude, we talked about it for 2 hours about Furnace Fest.
Yeah, it's true.
Furnace Fest is, like, literally the closest thing you're going to ever get to being 17 again. You know, so I mean, in that regard, like, I totally get it, and like the struggle of pushing on, you know, and doing stuff that you know might upset people, but also not really worrying about it is, you know, because I mean, Refused has not sounded the same. Like they've kind of had this. They've always been different, I guess. Like, I mean, even the first and second record sounded vastly different.
No two records sound the same. That was the interesting thing about, you know, a lot of people focus on the fact, and sorry to cut you off, that, well, it didn't sound like Shape of Punk to Come. Well, Shape of Punk to Come didn't sound like Fan the Flames, and Electra doesn't sound like Shape of Punk, and Electra to War Music doesn't sound the same. No two records sound the same, yet there are flashes of all of those records on the records, and I always find it interesting that, like I said, like, why is it that music is the only thing that we beholden someone to a very specific snapshot and never let them grow beyond that?
I think to a certain extent, like, there are people that, and this is a very generalized statement, I apologize, but I feel like a lot of people don't value music the way that other works of art are valued and the way other artists are valued. With music, it's very much like, I want you to do the thing that I like. Do that thing that I like, and I may only have a very limited palette of what I like. So you've got, you know, and I think that's what's so funny about The Shape of Punk to Come is that, like, that record not only didn't sound like Fan the Flames, but it didn't sound like anything really that I had ever heard before that, you know, and it was a very, very, very kind of out there, risky sort of record. I mean, to the point where it destroyed the band. You know, maybe the record didn't, but certainly the horrendous tour that they went on for it, and, you know, that they just had a terrible experience, and you know, like you said, they kind of had to experience that record as, you know, on the ground level, because they weren't really didn't get to actively participate in it. It's so weird. Yeah, like that's rough. And but like more to my point is, I just feel like, you know, people listen to music as their noise, their background noise, you know, and that's not to say that people, I mean, a lot of Refused fans, obviously it is like all about the lyrics and about the attitude, and I don't really feel like that's ever really changed, you know, but the music has certainly always been different, and I think sometimes people just want musicians just to do the same thing over and over and over and over again, and if they change too much, they're mad. But then, you know, on the flip side too, you have people that get really mad if you never diversify. So I think on discography discussion, we call that the unpleasable metal fan. You know, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. And I think Refused has handled it beautifully with the records that came out, you know, post breakup. You know.
I did find it interesting, you know, Tennis talking about how people are like, oh, they're a political band now, and it's like,
now?
Yeah, they've always been a political band.
Right.
The other thing, too, that was kind of interesting, and I didn't necessarily know how to approach it, and then I'm glad we kind of talked about it and got there organically, was basically, you know, I remember Refused getting so much shit for reuniting, and the reunion show basically happening at Coachella, and then, you know, subsequently the tour was announced, but it's exactly what Rage Against the Machine's going through currently. And I was like, if there's any other band that could parallel the butthurtedness, which is not a word, but it's on a podcast, so now it is the fact that, you know, Refused are a political band. They have their ideologies, basically, that are very prevalent in the music. And then you have Rage Against the Machine, who are, you know, anti-establishment and all that kind of shit. But it's like, you know, the thing that I really commended Dennis for saying was that basically that one show gave them the ability to do the rest of the tour.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think, I don't know, man. I'm always thinking back to that tour with Frodis that they did in the U.S., their last tour, you know, and I didn't see it, but, and obviously maybe I didn't want to because apparently it was terrible, but I don't know if they were terrible. I never got the full scoop on that. We'll have to, if we ever have a chance to get them back on again, I want to like really get deep into that tour and like what went on there. But yeah, whenever they came back, even I was a little bit guilty of like, they're different. I don't like things that are different, you know? But you know, like you said, you know, the mindset hasn't changed, you know, and it is weird here because I have heard that before, like, oh yeah, Refused is a political band now. Now? Their second record was called Fan the Flames of Discontent. I mean, are you serious? That record's not about like ceiling fans and like arson. Yeah, okay, that was a bad example, but you know, like, I don't know, man. Like that, I could go on for like 3.5 hours about how people, you know, don't pay enough attention to lyrics, but I don't think anybody needs to hear me talk about that anymore. Than I already have, but like seriously, come on.
But yeah, this was definitely a bucket list guess for me. I always wondered how it would go. You know, I've heard Dennis on other podcasts that we listen to, and you know, seemed obviously a very intelligent person, well-spoken person. All of that aside, I feel like we've talked quite a bit about coronaviruses and nostalgia, and we should kind of wrap this thing up. I actually want to talk about our sponsors. We have a new sponsor that came on very recently. This will be the first time they sponsored the show. It is rockabilia.com. If you are like me, and you or Dan, I mean, we love merch.
We do.
I bought just a plain Jane Refused Shape of Punk to Come album cover hoodie because it's classic, and you know, like the beginning of that record says, you know, the classics never go out of style. And Rockabilia is one of those companies that if you listen to a lot of music-based podcasts like we do, you've heard of this brand consistently for a long time. It's because they have been around for a long time and they have great quality products. So we're really excited to bring Rockabilia on as a sponsor, and coincidentally, they actually have a Refused exclusive shirt over there with a blue photo live shot of Dennis perched over, screaming into a microphone, just says Refused on the top of it. They have a really great, I'm not big on crew necks, but I kind of want this Slayer Refused crew neck that they have, as well as just a straight up, what are those Raglans, those like baseball t-shirts. It just says RFSD. It's kind of classic, you know, real easy and kind of fun to read. But they have, you know, over 500,000 products. If there is a band that you like, chances are they fucking have them there. They also do more than just rock and metal. They do hip hop. You know, I know they have Eminem. They also break into movies and so forth. So chances are, if you are into something relating to this podcast, you will find a garment or an item that suits whatever fandom you have. So we are very excited to have them on the show. Head on over there, support them for supporting us. Like I said, very, very fucking stoked to have them on this thing. They support only the best podcasts. I mean, they're on all the ones I listen to. So like I said, very much looking forward to them. And in our emails and dealings with them, you can tell that they're genuinely excited about music, especially hardcore rock metal. So, I mean, it just feels like a perfect pairing to have them finally come on over here and support us. So go support rockabilia.com. I believe when I went on to their site, if you are a first-time new user, you get 10% off your order. So, I mean, what's better than that?
Right.
And other sponsors, we have The Bean Bastard. Get you some delicious coffee. Head on over to thebeanbastard.com. Facebook and Instagram at The Bean Bastard. Coincidentally enough, on Instagram, I saw Florida Frank from Hatebreed was posting some guitar picks and some other stuff. And I think I commented on that Nick and all the guys over at The Bean Bastard need to make a Hatebreed inspired blend called Decaf is the Death of Desire.
Wow, that'd be awesome.
I mean, that's basically Jamie Josta's shirt thing from this podcast. Fitting. Yeah, but I mean, Josta has a t-shirt idea, and I think the Bean Bastard should make that an actual blend and make everything cool.
I would drink it, except I don't really drink decaf. So, I mean, it is kind of the death of my desire to drink coffee. So,
Well, maybe then you need I don't know. I was going to say in decaf, I don't know. Maybe you need some Perseverance blend. It's just straight black coffee.
I'll take it. I will take it. I'll buy your entire stock.
So head on over to the Bean Bastard. Let those guys know that we sent you over there. And On Point Pomade, as always, keep your hair and beard looking great. OnPointPomade.com. Use our code BSP15 and get 15% off your total purchase order. And keep up with all the latest going-ons with On Point Pomade at On Point Pomade on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And thank you to Podcorn for sponsoring this episode. I think it's a great tool. I think more podcasters and more content creators should take advantage of this platform. It's pretty new. I happened to stumble across it, and I think a lot more people should take advantage of it. So I want to thank them for supporting the show as well. And Dan will now tell you where he can be supported online.
Well, I can be supported a number of ways. Or really just contacted. I mean, you could support me if you want to, I guess. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Discuss Metal Dan. You can find me on Facebook under Daniel Terry. I can also be found at DiscussMetal.com talking about how either your favorite band is really good or really crappy or somewhere in between. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of all over the place.
If you would like to keep up with Refused, simple enough. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Refused. Check out their website, officialrefused.com. If you would like to keep up with Dennis, it's Instagram at Dennis Lyxzen, Lyxzen, and on Twitter at Lyxzen Official. It'll be in the show notes if you don't know how to spell his name, even though I just gave it to you. But shout out to the man for blessing the podcast. Holy shit. And for this episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I am Dan.
And we will talk to you all next time.